Hi there and welcome back. So continuing on from the beautiful previous video that we were talking about, each soul has its own path and no path is better than any other path. So if you are spiritually awakened in this lifetime or enlightened or whatever else you want to call it, whatever other names they have for it now, and it's just to be aware that you are spirit in human form. That's all it is. They're just all fancy names for that, right? If you are that, great, but that doesn't make you better than someone who's just started out and it may be their 10th lifetime and they're suffering, complete and utter suffering the whole time, pain and grief and the works. That soul is living its experience. That's what it came to do, to know what pain is, to know what grief is, to know what it is to suffer. Because outside of this beautiful simulation, none of that exists. This is our playground. We get to do it all here. It doesn't exist outside of this dimension, outside of this beautiful earth, this beautiful simulation we've been given to come and explore who we truly are. Explore ourselves. We come to explore here, to discover, to expand. Because with each experience, we expand. It's just like a video game. I know I keep going back to that, but in the video game, you choose your avatar before you come in. That's what we do when we come here. We choose our avatar. What is it that we want to be? Male, female, tall, short. All of it. We get to choose all of it before we come in. But the beauty of it is when you're in the video game and you're playing, anyone who's ever played a video game, no matter how simple or basic, usually you start at the beginning and it's very simple, very basic. But as you progress through, you'll find there are levels, and the levels get harder. But because you've already worked through these lower levels, you have all these skills now. So you don't get to the higher levels and, oh no, I can't handle it. No, you've already had all these years, all these levels, where you've been able to gain skills so that when you get to the higher levels, you can manage those higher levels. Actually, it's reminding me of when I teach piano, and the little ones, the students start off with their very, very basic books and their very basic things that they're picking up on to start with. And in the first levels, it's really just about getting the 5 fingers on each hand working. Just getting them moving, getting them to know which finger is what number and all of that. Very basic stuff. But as the years progress, and that's why I was thinking years with piano, you gain skills. And your skills build upon the skills that you've already done in the previous books. You see? So say in the first book, you're only learning each hand on its own because that's all you can manage. The songs are all right hand, and then you do songs in the left hand, and that's the first level. And then the second level, you try a little bit. Now you've had a whole year of doing the hands separate. We're going to try a little bit hands together. Very scary, for the student that's just starting out with the hands together. But you have to remember, we've had a whole year of each hand separate. And you've learnt all your finger numbers, and each hand is becoming a little bit more confident on its own. It's getting better. So now to put the hands together is the next level. So now we've got hands together. So what can we do now? Next level. And the next level, we learn how to do different things with our hands on the piano. We learn how to play soft sounds by playing very softly on the keys. We learn how to make loud sounds. And then the next level is having one hand soft and the other hand loud. And now they're doing different things. So they're not just playing together, but doing different things. And each level gets harder and harder. But because you've had the levels below them where you're already gaining skills, you can manage that next level. You can cope. You have the skills to cope. And life is exactly the same. If you've had a really difficult very, very difficult lifetime with very difficult experiences. A lot of suffering, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of all these things. You've already done all the easier levels. Okay, so say a simple level might be you come in to a lifetime and you have a neighbor that steals from you, people stealing from you. That's an easy one, because that's not something that you know, it's easy. People steal from you and you have this constant lifetime of people stealing from you. And then of course, because each lifetime has to have the two sides, you'll have lifetimes where you're stealing from others out of you're hungry, you know, out of necessity or whatever it is. Say that's a lower level. And then you've done that, you've completed that cycle. So you come into another level. And in the next level might be the level where, say, you have abusive parents and you get smacked and yelled a lot. So in your childhood, you're going to have this whole thing of growing up with shame, with guilt, with all the things that happen when you get yelled at and you get smacked. And then, of course, you'll have lifetimes where you come in, you're the adult, and you do the same. Now, I wanted to use that exact example for a reason, because something came to light in one of, I'm just thinking this morning was something I really, really wanted to share. Growing up, and this is where we're talking about you have choices. Growing up, you have your whole childhood where you're the little one and you have to put up with the rules of the grown-ups around you. Whatever it is that's going on in your house, in your home, you have to endure that, whether it's yelling and smacking, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's domestic violence, whatever it is that's going on in the house, whether you're constantly being put down, bullied by a grown-up, right? That's in your childhood. And you're observing all of this. You're observing. Okay, you have to endure all of this until you've grown up and you can leave and have your own life. Right? So you move out now, you're old enough, you have your own life, and you look back on your childhood and you always have a choice. You always have a choice that, well, I didn't like that very much. I didn't like whatever it was that they did. I wasn't comfortable with that. I didn't like that. I didn't like that flavor of ice cream. So when I have my own children or whoever I'm having experiences with from now on and I'm responsible, I'm not going to give them that flavor of ice cream because I didn't like it. So if I didn't like being smacked when I was little, I'm not going to smack my children. Now, we always have a choice. If it was something we didn't like, we can move forward and make sure we don't do it to others. We can make sure that cycle ends there, that cycle of abuse, whatever it was, right? We make that choice. But this is what happened to me. When I was little, I was smacked and I was yelled at a lot after my sister was born. My mum found it really difficult to cope with my sister, and so I was constantly getting in trouble with her, right? So there was the smacking and the yelling, and I swore as a grown-up, as soon as I left home, that when I had my children, I would never smack them and I would never yell at them, because I knew exactly how that felt, right? So we waited over 15 years for my little one to appear, for my daughter. Finally, she came. And in the first 4 years of her life, I don't know why I was doing the 4 out here because you can't see it. The first 4 years, I was yelling at her. And I was like, but I swore I would never do that. I never smacked her, right? Because honestly, I didn't see the point of it. I didn't learn anything from the smacking apart from being terrified of my mum. That's not really learning anything, right? As an adult, you would think whatever you implement is to teach them something. If you don't want them to do that, then anyway. But that's not what I learned from the smacking. All I learned was to be terrified of my mum. That was it. Whenever she came, I was like, she's gonna smack me. Anyway, but when my daughter was born, after about the first year, and then, they start talking and they start doing their thing and they start moving around, I found myself yelling at her. And I couldn't get over the fact that, why am I yelling at her when I know that I hated being yelled at when I was little? I hated it, more than the smacking. I think I hated the yelling more. And I couldn't for the life of me work it out. Why am I yelling at her? And it wasn't until my awakening. That's what we mean about awakening. A moment came where one day I was sitting there and I realized every time I yelled at my daughter, I was frustrated because I was having financial issues. Either there was a bill that I was behind with, I was behind with a mortgage, or there was always a financial issue. It was always an ongoing struggle with my husband and I, just getting on top of our finances. And I was always behind with everything, behind with the bills, behind with the mortgage, behind, the bank was constantly calling for us to, pay the mortgage. I was always behind. And I was finding that frustrating. Anyway, so eventually I went to a financial advisor and I got all the advice I needed, and I learned how to get on top of it because I'd never been taught. But as an adult, I never asked for help or went and looked for help, on how to do all of this grown-up stuff, all this budgeting thing. It wasn't something that I grew up with. It wasn't something that I was ever taught. But as a grown-up, I had the responsibility. I could go and learn. I could ask someone to teach me, someone that knew, right? So that's taking responsibility. If you know you've got a problem with something, find the help you need. Sort it out. Why we keep living, it's like madness. You expect it to change, but you're not doing anything different to change it. Anyway, so I did all that, but that was the reason I was frustrated. And my daughter would do something silly, like she was trying to learn how to pour milk into a cup. And of course she was 2 years old, and the bottle was too big, and she tipped half of it on the floor. Anyway, I went off the rails and I yelled at her and off she went, while I'm cleaning it up. But in that moment, I'm cleaning it up and I'm thinking to myself, why am I angry? Why am I yelling at her when it doesn't bother me to clean it up? And it doesn't bother me that she's learning how to do this. She has to make mistakes to learn how to do things. Without mistakes, we can't learn. As a piano teacher, I know that more than anyone else. You have to make 1 million mistakes in order for your pieces to sound beautiful on the piano. You have to make them, and you have to figure out different ways to play to make it sound beautiful and musical. Mistakes are necessary. So I already knew that with my daughter. I already knew mistakes are good. You have to learn. It's through mistakes that we learn. And so I'm cleaning up this milk, cleaning up this mess, and thinking to myself, what is this? Why do I keep yelling at her? Every time. And then it clicked. That morning I remember I was cleaning up the milk and I thought, I'm just angry because I can't pay the mortgage and the bank's calling me again. And I was frustrated. Anyway, that was the first moment where I started to realize what was going on, why the yelling, why I was yelling at her. But then the gift of why sometimes, even though we know we didn't like it, we need to be the perpetrators. We were once the victims, and then it's our turn to be the perpetrators. And we can choose not to. But in my case, I didn't know why I was doing it. It was just natural. I was just doing it. And partly, I think it was because it was a learned response from my mum. Whenever I did anything that wasn't something like that, like I spilt milk and she was going to have to clean it, I would get yelled at and I would get smacked. And so it was kind of a response to that. That's what used to happen to me. So I'm responding in this way. But the greatest gift to me was one day when I realized, I know now why I had to go through that as the mother, why I needed to yell at my daughter. Because in that moment I realized, now I know how my mum felt. Now I understand what my mum was going through. You see, because my parents had come from South America. They'd come to Australia. I was born here shortly after they arrived. But they came here with nothing, barely the clothes on their back, nothing. They came here to build a future together for them and for their children. And so I can imagine not knowing the language, not having any money, trying to move forward in this country. How frustrating would that have been? I had the language. You know, the only thing was I didn't know how to manage money, but we had money. It wasn't like I started from scratch, from zero like they did. But I had to have that experience so that I could understand how my mum felt, what she was feeling, what she was going through. Every experience you have is a gift to you. It's a gift to your soul. You're giving this gift to your soul because your soul gets to have the experience it desired to have. It gets to know what that feels like. And sometimes we play both roles. We're the ones being yelled at and we're the ones that get to yell. Why? Because in being the ones that yell, we can understand, oh, that's what my parents were going through. Now I understand. It shows us compassion for them. So after she was 4, my daughter was 4, I didn't feel the need to yell at her anymore because I understood all that. I understood why I was yelling, where it was coming from. But then there was a deeper awareness that wasn't just why I was yelling at her, but because I needed to understand what my mum was going through so that I could have a deeper compassion for her and her experience here on earth. You see? So every experience is sacred. Every human experience, whether you understand it or not, is not up to you. But everything is sacred. So instead of judging others that it looks good or it looks bad or it looks right or it looks wrong, focus on your experience. What are you meant to gain from this experience? Focus on yourself. What is it that your soul wants to gain from this experience? And then you'll be on the right path. Because you're no longer looking at, well, what's he doing? What's she doing? And what are they? This is your path. Yours and yours alone. Only you can know what you are meant to gain from this. The others have their own paths. Let them figure it out. They have their own souls guiding them. It's not your job. Remember, we've talked about this before. It's not your job to fix it. Your job is to figure out, well, what am I supposed to gain from this experience? All right, my darlings. I love you guys. Remember to click like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the messages. And hopefully that's left you with a whole new way of looking at life now. What am I meant to gain from this experience? Look at all the different things I gained from the yelling. One, it was out of frustration. It never had anything to do with my daughter. So if you ever thought that your parents were yelling at you or smacking you or going off the rails at you for anything, it was never about you, ever. And that's in my very first book, Your Past is a Gift. I already became aware of all of that then. It was never about you. They were going through their own frustrations, their own limitations. All right, my darlings. I love you. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.